Coming up on Bridge City News, more Lethbridge schools were hit with the novel coronavirus. We will tell you which ones. In an effort to save $600 million, the UCP announced today that 11,000 jobs will be cut from Alberta Health Services. And a powerful story about how volunteers with Samaritan's Purse are helping those devastated by the wildfires in Oregon.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. Alberta Health Services has confirmed more cases of COVID-19 at Lethbridge schools. The most recent is a single case at Lakeview Elementary School. Now, over the weekend, there were also cases at Agnes Davison and Fleetwood Bodden Elementary School. The AHS and Lethbridge School Division previously reported cases at both Victoria Park and Chinook High School. The identities of those infected with the virus have not been released. AHS says the infected parties and those who were in close contact have been instructed to quarantine for 14 days. Following a professional development week, the school schedules will return to normal on Monday, October 19th. Alberta's Chief Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Dina Henshaw, says there were 961 new novel coronavirus cases in our province over the past 4 days. Henshaw says she is concerned about the rise in COVID-19 cases, especially in the Edmonton zone.
The Edmonton zone remains the hotspot in the province with 1,444 active cases right now. Sadly, I must report that there have been 4 deaths from COVID since my last update on Thursday. Any death at any time for any reason is devastating for those who are grieving the loss of a loved one. It can be especially difficult during a holiday like Thanksgiving. And it's made even harder by the pandemic, which makes gathering with friends and family more difficult at a time where you need their comfort most.
The AHS is reporting that there are now 260 active cases of COVID-19 here in the South Zone. More than 1,800 people have also recovered from the virus in our region. Across the province, just over 18,000 people have recovered from COVID-19. Close to 11,000 jobs will be cut as the Alberta government is trying to save around $600 million annually on healthcare costs. Health Minister Tyler Shandro said many management positions at Alberta Health Services would be cut, and other jobs too, including those in the food services, community lab, and laundry services, will be outsourced.
Now, labor costs make up roughly 70% of AHS's total expenses. AHS can't achieve savings, and those savings can't be then reinvested into improving the system for Albertans without changes to its workforce. However, Premier Kenney and I have been clear. There can be no job losses for nurses or frontline clinical staff during the pandemic.
The Alberta Union of Provincial Employees blasted Health Minister Tyler Shandro, saying his job-killing plan threatens care and attacks healthcare heroes during a surging pandemic. The union says they will not let the UCP sell off 9,700 general support services and eliminate 800 clinical positions without a fight.
This government that ran on a platform of job creation and hasn't created any jobs. In fact, they've eliminated thousands of jobs, that it's shocking. And it's going to hurt rural Alberta really hard because sometimes these jobs are, they help support those communities. It certainly, it makes sure that those workers have a roof over their head and food on the table. 75% of them are women. Many of them are new Canadians. Many of them are single parents. So losing, these jobs is going to be devastating. So they're heroes right now, but I guess when the pandemic's over, they're just thrown on the trash heap. And they're angry. We're hearing from members across the province. They're angry.
The union says strike action is on the table if negotiations with the government breaks down. The Canadian Taxpayers Federation is supporting Health Minister Tyler Shandro's efforts to create $600 million in healthcare savings. The province would do so through outsourcing, attrition, and reductions in management bureaucrats. CTF Alberta Director Franco Terrazzano says today's announcement is a good first step to make our province's healthcare system more efficient.
Alberta's businesses can obviously do a great job doing laundry and preparing meals. So today's announcement was really a no-brainer to help relieve some of the mounting costs that have been placed on the taxpayers. So announcements from today, such as finding savings through attrition or working with businesses to provide food and to do the laundry, and also phasing out some management positions. I mean, those are the necessary steps to finding savings in Alberta's high-cost healthcare system.
Terrazano says Alberta could save $3.6 billion if its per-person healthcare spending was in line with BC, Ontario, and Quebec. He says Alberta spends more per person on healthcare than every other province except for Newfoundland and Labrador. Our country's Chief Public Health Officer, Dr. Theresa Tam, says as long as kids are trick-or-treating outdoors this year and wearing masks, going out for Halloween should be fine in most parts of the country, even amid a pandemic.
So I think trick-or-treating outside with the right distancing, pre-packaging your treats so that people are not rummaging in a bowl of their bonbon candies is actually important. Having hand sanitizers for your kids, wearing a mask, and sometimes you can actually use different fabrics to turn it into part of your costume. But there's some really interesting ideas where people are handing out, treats at the end of a hockey stick or something, using a pool noodle to tell your kids how far they should be standing apart from each other. So there are ways to actually manage this.
Two separate reports are warning that a second wave of the novel coronavirus could put Canadians into deeper debt while the rich get richer. The latest Consumer Debt Index says the recession is putting the spotlight on inequalities between the well-off and those dealing with job losses, debt, and eviction. MNP says 44% of households earning between $40,000 and $60,000 a year are $200 or less away from insolvency. That includes 22% who are already bankrupt. Meanwhile, BDO Canada's Affordability Index shows 40% of Canadians have suffered financially during the pandemic, while 25% say they were better off. The City of Lethbridge is looking for feedback on the current state of the River Valley. They'll do this in the form of a 15-minute public engagement survey, which is being distributed. The survey will be mailed to every household in the city.
And what we're trying to determine is what do people use the River Valley for now? What are some concerns they have over the River Valley? What are some practices that they'd like to see as we start to plan moving forward? The River Valley is a very unique asset that we have here in the city. We're one of the few municipalities who have such a great natural resource that runs right through the heart of the city. But as we're finding populations expanding in Lethbridge, there's a lot of recreational use occurring in the River Valley, and we're definitely not trying to restrict or eliminate any recreation, but we want to make sure that we're also balancing that with preservation of the natural resources.
To complete the survey, you can visit the Get Involved Lethbridge website and click on the River Valley Engagement Project. The Lethbridge Fire and Emergency Services hazmat team took part in training today to showcase the explosive situations they might find themselves in during a call. As Micah Quinn explains now, the hazmat team responds to close to 400 of those calls each and every year.
The hazmat team are training for a term called chemical hide-and-go-seek.
I've kind of hidden some chemicals in there. The guys have gone in with some of our detection gear. Had to make an attempt to find out where it's located, and then bring it out, and using some of our other advanced monitors to determine what that chemical was. Something that we may see quite a bit here in town. We do get a lot of calls for unknown odors, and this is the way that we go about taking care of those things.
There are currently 35 members on the hazmat team, and most are volunteers from the department. The suits they are wearing are Level A chemical protective.
There isn't anything that'll be above that, so those guys have the absolute gold standard of protection in there. And then we also have our accountability piece where we know where all of our team members are at any given time, and that we can also have guys suited up to go in and attain a rescue if they had to.
The team covers calls all over the county.
So we do a lot of work with the railroads and all the industry out in the county. So generally when we do the full team call-outs, you may find us out in the county. With our trailer here and the tent over on this end, we're pretty self-sufficient. We do have to leave town for quite a bit of time. We bring our own power, we bring our own air, and we bring our own nutrition and water with us.
They also train with police for meth lab situations.
And definitely we're all aware of the fentanyl crisis that's been going on. There has been a huge call for us to come in and identify unknown white powders, determine whether or not it is a fentanyl or any of those other hazardous opioids.
McLennan says that had this been a real call, they would have had all 35 team members there.
And anytime there's a guy in the suit, we're going to have 2 backup teams. So we'll have 6 guys suited up, and that's just for protection so that we can go in and get our guys if there was any kind of negative outcomes.
For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
Firefighters battling 2 wildfires in southern Alberta over the Thanksgiving weekend had snow to thank for helping to control the blazes. Officials say snow that fell Sunday and early yesterday on a blaze west of Calgary meant the flames were not expected to spread. The fire was originally classified as out of control, but thanks to the recent moisture, that has changed. The province's heavy equipment and helicopters were in the process of demobilizing. Another small fire that burned just 500 meters from the community of Ghost Lake was also brought under control. The junior hockey coach who died in the Humboldt Broncos bus crash was honored with a bronze statue in Peace River, Alberta over the weekend. 42-year-old Darcy Hogan, a devout Christian, was one of the 16 who died when the junior hockey team's bus collided with a semi at an intersection on a Saskatchewan highway on April 6th of 2018. 13 other people were also injured in the crash. Prior to coaching the Broncos, Hogan coached the North Peace Navigators in the Northwest Junior Hockey League for 12 seasons. Hogan was remembered as a man who pushed his players to bring their best to the rink and to their personal lives. The statue, which is 3/4 life-size and weighs close to 200 kilograms, was cast by Don and Shirley Begg of Studio West in Cochrane, Alberta. The Federal Conservative Party wants to create an anti-corruption committee to continue investigating the We Charity scandal. They say the proposed new committee could take over the probe of the Liberal government's choice of We Charity to administer the multi-million-dollar Canada Student Service Grant Program. Opposition MPs have been grilling the government for months now over the abandoned program because of the charity's close connection to the families of Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and the former Finance Minister Bill Morneau. U.S. President Donald Trump returned to the campaign trail. He held his first rally in Florida after contracting the novel coronavirus. Trump declared himself in great shape and said he's well enough to kiss everyone in the audience.
Biden would terminate our recovery, delay the vaccine, prolong the pandemic, and annihilate Florida's economy with a draconian, unscientific lockdown. That's what he wants to do, lock it down. Lock it down, everybody. And you know what? If you don't feel good about going out, stay. Relax, stay. You know the risk groups, you know the older people. See, fortunately, I'm not an old person. I'm very young, and I'm in such perfect shape. Right? I'm in such great shape.
Joe Biden, meanwhile, made a campaign stop in Cincinnati, Ohio. He made a pitch for bipartisanship, saying he was campaigning as a proud Democrat, but would govern as an American president.
We need to revive the spirit of bipartisanship in this country. I know that sounds bizarre in light of where we are. The spirit of being able to work with one another. When I say that, and I said that from the time I announced, I was told that maybe that was the way things used to work, Joe. You got a lot done before, Joe, but you can't do that anymore. Well, I'm here to tell you and say we can.
Church leaders say they are organizing caravans of absentee ballot drop-offs and in-person early voting for the U.S. federal election. Many have concerns over possible voter intimidation.
Okay, so it's one word? Yeah. Okay.
Today, it is my obligation as a public servant to serve the people of my community, my borough, and the locations where I grew up in East New York and East Flatbush, to let those that feel disenfranchised, marginalized, people that are discouraged, to let them know that they have the power. And that starts with them registering to vote. So the Souls to the Poll campaign is about getting everyone to the polls. We need a change in our nation and our country, and the way to do that is to get everyone to go out to vote.
Our goal is to make sure that the community, not just congregants, but that the community has the access to be enfranchised, right? And so what that means is making sure that people who don't know if they're registered, making sure that they're getting registered so that they can vote. People who were formerly incarcerated, who may have had their rights to vote revoked, making sure that they know at which point they are allowed to vote. And so really it's about going out and educating their community and then also giving them access to voter registration.
In the wake of devastating wildfires in Oregon, Samaritan's Purse is seeking to be the hands and feet of Jesus to devastated homeowners. As we hear in this next report, teams are sifting through ashes in search of items precious to each and every family member. Every homeowner receives a Bible signed by the volunteers who work on their property.
We had less than an hour. The sheriffs came by and said you had to leave now. So we just started grabbing stuff.
It just was devastation in that, and my place just burned to the ground. Everything. It was almost like an atomic bomb went off.
Total destruction. Everything was gone.
We were all out in the street here on the corner looking at the smoke, and about 5 minutes later he comes around and said, well, the police are coming in, get ready to get out.
The loudspeaker said, get out, everybody out. Explosions all around and fire, and I was going about 6 miles an hour on my scooter.
The winds were very, very, very strong like me. There was walls of flame on either side of me. I was scared. I was really scared.
We are here in Jackson County, Oregon, where the Almeida fire came through a couple of weeks ago, destroyed 3,500 structures, and many of them are homes. Samaritan's Purse is here sifting through the ashes of the home to recover salvageable belongings for the homeowner and renter.
I was expecting one or maybe two people, and there was, what, 12 to 14 people?
I couldn't believe the amount of people. And then when everybody was saying where they were from, I was like, you're from where?
Samaritan's Purse came in this hot day and went through my stuff and tried to find anything they could. And I expected maybe to get, maybe I'll find 5, 10 things, you know. Probably there's 40, 50 things, and some of them very meaningful.
Not only are we able to encourage them physically by finding their belongings, but we're able to encourage them spiritually. We're able to pray for them and share the love of Christ with them, that they are not alone in their suffering, and that we love them and that God loves them.
So we're helping in the name of Jesus, really. This is all about helping these homeowners and just kind of lavishing with the love that Jesus gave us and how he commanded us to love our neighbor as ourselves.
At Samaritan's Purse, we use the concept of being the hands and feet of Jesus in order to share a gospel of caring and love for the communities that are affected by these disasters. We're here to give them a hand and to give them some encouragement, give them closure. Often when we pray with our homeowners, I can just see Jesus putting his arms around them.
Well, after they worked so hard in this heat, and they came and presented me with a Bible with all their signatures in it, and I will cherish that for as long as I live.
From the bottom of my heart, words like thank you, they do a poor job of expressing my real appreciation for the Samaritan's Purse organization, because it's a really hard time. And you guys are lightening that load with compassion and caring. I can tell you it is the most rewarding thing I've ever done, and the things I have learned will go with me into heaven.
Now this is quite a sight. Hundreds of Argentine flags were recently planted at a beach in the South American nation, honoring those who lost their lives to COVID-19. Argentina's had 904,000 cases of the virus, along with over 24,000 deaths. Fortunately, 733,000 people have also recovered from the novel coronavirus. The worst hit region was the Buenos Aires province, which has seen close to 15,000 deaths. Worldwide, there have been just over 1 million deaths attributed to the novel coronavirus. It was on this day that Britain's Margaret Thatcher and musician Paul Simon were born, and TV variety show host Ed Sullivan dies. This is Today in History for October the 13th.
October 13th, 1792. In the District of Columbia, the cornerstone is laid for the Executive Mansion, what we now call the White House. Its first occupants, President John Adams and his wife Abigail, move in when construction is nearly complete some 8 years later. 1925.
I'll strive unceasingly to try to fulfill the trust and confidence that the British people have placed in me and the things in which I believe.
Margaret Thatcher, Britain's first female prime minister, is born in Grantham in eastern England. Dubbed the Iron Lady, the conservative Thatcher dominates British politics during more than a decade in power. 1903. In Boston, the first modern World Series in Major League Baseball ends in victory for the home team. The Boston Americans shut out the Pittsburgh Pirates 3-0, clinching the series 5-3. 1974.
The city never has witnessed the excitement stirred by these youngsters from Liverpool.
Ed Sullivan, the longtime TV variety show host, dies in New York at age 72. And 1941. Paul Simon, singer, songwriter, and musician, is born in Newark, New Jersey. Today in History, October 13th. Carlotta Bradley, The Associated Press.
Lots of clouds and cooler today in the Windy City. We received some rain, and there's even a chance of some snow hitting our region as well fairly soon. A complete look at the weather picture is on deck. We had a much cooler day today with spotty showers in some regions of southwestern Alberta. Tomorrow, there's even a chance we may see some of the white stuff. Jeanette Rocher is here now with all of the weather details.
cloudy and an overnight low of 4 degrees can be expected tonight in Lethbridge with a southwest wind gusting to 60 kilometers per hour. Tomorrow, rain showers could start our day, turning to flurries by the afternoon, and the temperature could possibly fall to 4 degrees, but hover around that 4-degree mark. Thursday, clearing and a high of 6 degrees. Friday, a mix of sun and cloud with wind gusts, high of 15. We could see rain or snow Friday night as well. Saturday, cloudy and a high of 0. Sunday, sun and cloud with a high of only 1 degree. Next Monday, a high of 8 and partly cloudy skies. According to our almanac, the average high for this time of year should be 15 degrees. We are nowhere near that these days. Our average low, 1 degree. Our high temperature was on this day in 1964. It was 29 degrees. And our low temperature was -11. That was back in 1969. Sun rose this morning at 7:50 a.m. and our sunset this evening can be expected at 6:45 p.m. And looking at our national forecast for tomorrow, Victoria could see a high of 16 degrees with a chance of showers. Mix of sun and cloud expected in Vancouver. Mainly cloudy skies in Edmonton. Mix of sun and cloud in Calgary, although they could see light snow mixed with rain and a high of 4 degrees. Winnipeg could see a 30% chance of showers with 8 degrees the high. Mainly cloudy skies in Regina with a high of 5. High of 4 expected in Saskatoon with a mix of sun and cloud. Looking over to central Canada, a mix of sun and cloud also expected in Toronto with a high of 17 degrees. Partly cloudy skies also expected for Ottawa and Montreal with highs of 15 degrees in both of those cities. Montreal could see some wind gusts as well. And over in Atlantic Canada, heavy rains are expected with possibility of thunderstorms for Fredericton, Charlottetown, and Halifax. Highs of 17 in Charlottetown and Halifax, and Fredericton could see a high of 15 degrees there. St. John's, Newfoundland, mainly sunny skies with a high of 13 degrees, and they could see some wind gusts up to 40 kilometers per hour.
The global recession caused by the COVID-19 pandemic is pushing the world economy toward its worst collapse in almost 100 years. The International Monetary Fund says we should be seeing a global contraction of 4.4% this year. The group does say, however, that they predict a rebound of 5.2% in 2021, although that is dependent on the spread of the virus. Shares in Transat AT jumped 23% after it was confirmed that Air Canada still intends to purchase the travel company. The two Montreal-based companies have agreed on revised terms that would see Air Canada pay $190 million for its small arrival. Now that is down from the previous price of $720 million before the aviation industry collapsed during the pandemic. The deal was endorsed by Transat's board of directors, but must still receive approval from 2/3 of Transat's shareholders. Facebook is banning posts that deny or distort the Holocaust. The social media giant says it will also start directing people to authoritative sources if they search for information about the Nazi genocide.
Listen, I think the statement is very strong, right? Because it talks about, I'm just reading it now, to prevent any content that denies or distorts the Holocaust. Right? It's a very important statement, and it's a building block toward ensuring that this sort of anti-Semitism isn't amplified. And that's what was really happening on the internet, is that rather than fighting anti-Semitism or teaching about the Holocaust, it was amplifying the negative messages. But we've been pushing really hard. But listen, the voice of survivors, they have a moral authority on this issue, which is unparalleled. And so it doesn't surprise me that Mark Zuckerberg and some of the really smart people at Facebook heeded the concerns of Holocaust survivors in this claims conference campaign and did the right thing.
World Trade Organization arbitrators say the European Union can slap sanctions of up to $4 billion in U.S. goods. It is in retaliation to Washington's alleged illegal support of plane maker Boeing. The ruling amounts to one of the largest penalties handed down by the Geneva-based trade body. It comes a year following another ruling authorizing billions in penalties against the EU over support for Boeing rival Airbus. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was down 51 points on the day to 16,510. The Dow was down 157 points to 28,679. The S&P 500 was down 22 points to 3511, and the Nasdaq was also down on the day, 12 points to 11,863. West Texas Intermediate Oil was up 74 cents to $40.17 US per barrel. Natural gas was down 12 cents to $2.76. Gold was down 31.31 to 1891.47 US an ounce, and silver was unchanged at 24.13 US an ounce. Wheat is at $257 per metric ton, barley's at $249, canola's at $4.88, and corn is at $269 per metric ton. Live cattle were up 40 cents to $111.23, feeder cattle were up $1.28 to $136.83, and lean hogs were down 48 cents to $66.15. The Canadian dollar was up slightly over the past 24 hours to 76.12 US. Recapping one of our top stories this hour, Alberta Health Services has confirmed more cases of COVID-19 at Lethbridge schools. The most recent is a single case at Lakeview Elementary School. Over the weekend, there were also cases at Agnes Davidson and Fleetwood Bodden Elementary School. The HS and Lethbridge School Division previously reported cases at both Victoria Park and Chinook High Schools. The identities of those infected with the virus have not been released. AHS says the infected parties and those who've been in close contact have been instructed to quarantine for 14 days. The COVID-19 pandemic has caused a strain on many relationships, including those inside the home. Coming up, an interview with Dr. David Curry, the president of Doing Family Right, who discusses how couples can avoid clashes and improve their relationship during the pandemic. But first, here's a look what's happening in and around your community.
Here's your Bridge City News community calendar. Bikers Building Bridges is hosting their second annual Halloween drive-through trunk or treat, taking place at Exhibition Park's north parking lot on Halloween night going from 5:30 to 9 p.m. Come out for a spooky good time, decorate your vehicle, and hand out candy safely. For details about this event and to register your trunk, visit bikersbuildingbridges.com. The Juno Beach Centre is Canada's only museum in Normandy dedicated to honouring the contributions of 1.1 million men and women who served during World War II. This year, support a worthy cause and take part in the Remembrance Day races being held until November 28th. You can register for one of 3 virtual race distances, each with its own special meaning. Participants will receive a race kit that includes a commemorative medal, a Juno Beach collector coin, a bracelet, and more. For details and to register, visit junobeach.org. Bring your lunch and enjoy beautiful live music at the same time. Come out November 6th to the first Friday Lunch and Listen concert series featuring performances by the University of Lethbridge Conservatory of Music in Cass's Community Room beginning 12:15 p.m. and ending at 1. First Friday events are an initiative brought to you by the Heart of Our City Committee. For a full listing of upcoming events, visit firstfridaylethbridge.com. And that's your Bridge City News community calendar.
Well, the COVID-19 pandemic has drastically changed how our day-to-day lives are lived out, and it's been a frustrating experience for most of us. This change has also put more stress on our family relationships. We want to get some advice from today's guest, Dr. David Curry, president of Doing Family Right, and he is based in Abbotsford, British Columbia. Welcome to Bridge City News, Dr. Curry. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, it's great to be back on the program. Always honored to just help out where I can.
That's great. Okay, so the coronavirus has changed the way we live our lives. Being stuck at home can take its toll on relationships, even good relationships. So we all need our space, obviously. So what kinds of marital upsets are you hearing about as a result of being isolated together?
Well, obviously, we do need a measurable alone time because otherwise there's no mystery in our lives. And now with the COVID crisis, we're working at home or maybe lost our job. And so there's all kinds of pressures financially. There's pressures to just worry about the pandemic, and even contracting the disease. And is it going to affect me? There's worry about long-term factors. And there's stresses on even the educational side because now I'm super teacher and all that super, if you're not used to homeschooling, which most aren't. There's a lot of pressures on the home and the family at this time.
Yeah, no kidding. What advice do you have for couples to avoid these kinds of clashes, kind of about like money and spending too much time together, instead to actually use this time to improve their relationships?
Yeah. You asked the question, Jeanette, because I recently wrote an article exactly on this and the difference between social distancing, which we need to do, and social exclusiveness, which I am actually able to be with my spouse and family at this time where I'm as it were, quarantined. And so it's how you look at it. It can be a great enriching time. It also can reveal a lot of fractures in the relationship that are already there because the extra stress is going to do that. So just operating with a greater level of patience, recognize that extra stress is there for all of us. And so, a little more grace, a little more patience. Sometimes we have to do timeouts, maybe chill, do our version of workout stresses and things. But yeah, there's just some realizations that things are different, and we have to think a longer perspective. It's not just hang in there for another 2 or 3 weeks and we should be good. This could be another few months or longer, and so we got to start getting into some routines that are going to be functional.
Yeah, exactly. Now, of course, the kids aren't able to attend school, so mom and dad are stuck doing some kind of home education. Any tips on how to do this successfully?
Most of us have a measure of tolerance for our kids, but are quite happy that they head off to school around 8:30 and come home around 3. Give us time to do our thing, their learning and those kind of things. But now to take on this whole dimension of teacher, educator, basically preoccupier of 5 extra hours of their day, that's a whole new thing. And most of us maybe don't have an educational background of how to do this right. We likely have the capacity to understand and teach them what most of them need to know, but haven't thought the routines through, haven't thought through how to do this. And of course, a lot of the teaching is online, so they have to connect with teachers and peers, and then they have assignments, and we got to supervise them more and be more present. It's very complicated, and what I would suggest for parents on this one is just embrace this new role early as you can and get past this is frustrating, because this could be for a while. And so whether you're going to pitch hit for each other, husband one day, wife another day, whether it's because sometimes working at home, the husband might be home working too, she may be off work, who knows, they might have both lost job and are frustrated with that too. But there needs to be a commitment to helping the kids, because it's new to them too, right? I mean, I was talking to my grandkids, and they were talking about how they don't like it as much because they don't get to see their friends. Because, so much of mom and dad is not even their favorite thing either, because their friends are fun and they get recess and all these things. And so, it's a change for the kids. So we're going to have to all kind of fall forward together.
Yeah, exactly. It's interesting you kind of mentioned sticking in a routine. Is it important to have the routine, like maybe this is school time, this is chore time, time for physical activity, anything like that? Would you suggest anything like that?
Yeah, 100%. As a matter of fact, not even with the COVID-19 pandemic on us, it's wiser for any family to establish a routine so that the expectations don't have to be recommunicated every day. Because if you don't have a routine, it's kind of like, well, what's next? Well, I want to go play video games. I want to go play video games, right? And it just keeps coming back. Or I'm hungry. Well, we're going to have breakfast first. Then we're going to do some schoolwork. Then we're going to have a break, kind of like recess. Then we're going to have a snack. And then, to plan out the day and to have that consistent so that every day you don't have to kind of readjust the schedule. Here's the expectations, and you're not fighting so much because they get in their head. Here's what the routine is, and this is how we're going to do it. Now, as they get older, you can flex the routine a little more as they get into their teens and beyond. They have a little more independence, but especially when they're young, the routine is the way to go.
Yeah. Now, you'd mentioned fighting. So with families having to stay at home in close quarters, siblings obviously start to get on each other's nerves, right? So once a fight happens, are there do's and don'ts as to how a parent should respond to an argument?
Well, no different than the fights that happened every day before the pandemic happened. They've always been there. And, strong-willed kids, different personalities, these are all in play. And what happens is through a crisis period, through an extra stress period, the rate of the fights could increase, the intensity of the fights could increase, and even the parents' resiliency to handle the fights could be less. And so, there needs to be a game plan there. One of the things that I like doing is if you've given them some time to work on things, you come back and they're fighting, and you didn't know really who caused what and what happened, the best thing to do is say, okay, listen, you got 2 minutes to go in that room and come out of there having solved this, or else you're both going to have a 10-minute timeout. Yeah, but I didn't do it. He did. Okay, I don't care. I wasn't here. So let's don't. So you actually put them in a room for 2 to 3 minutes. You try to solve it, talk it out, because if you don't, you're both going to get funny. Well, that's not fair. I said, okay, well, I wasn't here. You go talk it out. So you hear them behind the closed doors going, well, you shouldn't have said that. Well, you're stupid. Well, yeah, but I don't want to wait 10 minutes. And you hear them talking behind the door, and they come out and we're okay now. Well, because you're gonna unilaterally just punish everybody. And of course, that's not fair if you know that one's always picking on another one. But you got to find creative ways to push beyond, and obviously find their currency. What is the thing that really motivates them? If the currency is a snack still, if the currency is playtime with a certain toy, if it's social media, if it's some kind of electronic game, find out what their currency is, and that's the one that you use to control their behavior.
Wow, yeah. It sounds like almost forcing them into conflict resolution and communication. So those are good life skills, actually. And this, of course, is a hard one, but what steps can parents take to prevent the kids from starting fights?
Well, I mean, if you got your game plan together and know where we're going, and you can kind of anticipate the trouble spots. When I drive from here to my office, from my home office to my work office, I know the potholes in the road. I know I got to steer a little bit right here, a little bit left there. And parents are wise enough to know the potholes, where the tensions are going to be. This one's going to fight over food. They didn't get enough. So be careful on that one there. This one isn't good at being alone. So you got to supervise them a little more. So the wiser the parent, the more they know the trouble points, where the potholes in the road in the family, to kind of steer them away. And you can start to realize, okay, this was too long of this. We got to stop and come back to this, or we need some activity time to get some of the energy out. You got to just read the situation and react accordingly as a parent.
Yeah, well, you hit the nail on the head right there. How important is it for the kids to get some physical activity during this time?
Well, if you raise kids, and we had 4 and now 13 grandkids, you got to understand that they go stir crazy. They got all this energy inside, and having them kind of really get a little bit tired, a little bit exercise out and all that allows them to settle down for a period. They're not as antsy. They can settle in on a task. And so it's really important to vary the educational time with, I know you can only play in your backyard or in the park near whatever with your kids, but, some kind of tag, or, we got croquet in the backyard, or other different games where they can play, or we go for a family walk or a hike or whatever, just to let that energy be spent. And because most kids like recess at school, they're going to like those breaks as well. And so, but the activity, some kind of physical exertion is a good thing.
Yeah, that's great, especially now that the weather is getting nicer. And then, of course, kids, they love to spend hours on the screen. So what's your advice on how to set proper boundaries around this?
Yeah, well, of course, that's a complicated one before the virus, right? Because, kids are becoming really screen dominant. If I use the word FaceTime, meaning you and me seeing face to face, not like on a screen, though Apple has used that. I like to have kids balance FaceTime, real face-to-face time, with screen time. To just say, look, if you've had 2 hours of playing with real people, you can have some time now with screen time, right? And try to find a balance between FaceTime, real people time, and screen time. And then also, keep an idea that the screen time is part of the reward system. For most of them, that's the gratitude. They want to do that. And so that's part of the currency. So really important to keep in mind that I can use that as collateral in my corner to get the behavior that I want. So healthy boundaries, depending on the age of the kid, and be careful when they're really young. They do it too much, the addictive behavior kicks in, and then it more becomes an impulse control problem, and that's hard to correct later. So be careful.
Yeah, and this isolation time, it also gives us an opportunity to spend more quality time together as a family, which is a good thing. So and that could include, regular time reading scripture together, or praying together, or even discussing some of the many questions that kids might have about life. So what's your advice for parents who are afraid to maybe tackle those big issues in the spiritual family times together?
You're so right, Jeanette, when we're talking about there's more opportunity for family time. I call it social exclusiveness, that we are forced now to be our little unit, our family. And of course, right down to individually, I have no excuse now, well, I don't have time to read my Bible. You have a little more time to read your Bible now. Okay, so you shouldn't be able to use that as an excuse. Also, to carve out time for a couple, especially if your kids are older and they can watch themselves, for couples to go on a walk or just to go pick up with their favorite drink and just chat in the park, husband and wife together. A little more couple time would be really wise. And then even as a family, to do things together as a family. More families are doing more games and puzzles and watching things together than they ever have before. So that's all good. Spiritually is an interesting thing. Rather than, my opinion, would be rather than trying to carve out more God time, interact about spiritual things as part of life. Rather than, well, we're going to have family devotions now. Well, okay, you can have some devoted time to share something and to pray together. That's good. We pray together every night with our kids. And even on the weekend, we had some grandkids over. We prayed with them every evening. But spiritually, it's really important to live your faith, first of all. Your kids are going to get it from you because they have been watching it. But then secondly, talk about the Lord and the difference Christ makes, even how it relates to the crisis. Talk about that as everyday life conversation, not just in this set time. Have the set times, but be bigger than that. Is that fair?
Absolutely. Of course, this whole situation is having an impact also on divorced parents who are sharing custody of kids. So what we're hearing is that in some cases, one parent maybe believes that the other isn't following proper health precautions, so they feel justified in not allowing visitation or not sharing custody as required by the courts. So what's the proper way to maybe handle a situation like that?
Well, that's a good question. It's a fair question. But for those in that situation, obviously the greater amicability between a divorced, partners, the better it's going to be for the kids. So before COVID came along, there has to be a willingness to work together, that custody is shared and we respect one another. And so the greater there is that flow happening, the more likely during this time we'll be able to get through these things. I did have a couple just last week where there was a stress over this very thing. And it had to do with, the husband wasn't limiting his sphere of connections as much as the wife thought she needed, or she wanted in the family, and so she and he were at odds about, I'm okay with this, no, that's not good, because they have a child with surgery pending, and she didn't want that person, the child, to be sick before the surgery, and so rather than commanding and putting rules down in this situation, no, they weren't divorced, but it was stress over the very same COVID stuff. I just said, look, just appeal on their desire for what's best for the kid, and trust them to make a wise decision, because the kid needs both parents. I mean, no matter, unless it's really abusive or toxic, but the kid needs both parents. And so we need to do our best to be amicable in these situations.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a lot of really, really good advice, especially for this very stressful situation that we're all kind of dealing with right now. Any final thoughts on how to keep our homes a peaceful, safe place during this pandemic?
You got to take responsibility for you. You have to say, okay, I need to be my best me at this time. I need to put a game face on. When I say game face, I don't mean harsh. I mean, it could be pleasant. It could be positive. It could be encouraging. It could be Christ-centered. But you need to be your best you. So whatever it takes to keep you healthy so you can be the best husband, the best wife, the best parent, the best friend, that's what's important. It starts with you and you taking responsibility before the Lord for how you interact with your spouse and your kids. That changes everything if you take responsibility for you. And don't blame others for your issues. Deal with it, be the best you, and trust God to work in your life so that your family can be as positive can be during this challenging time.
All right. Thank you so much for being with us today, Dr. Curry.
Awesome. Awesome to be there anytime.
As the dust settles and economies slowly reopen after months of COVID-19 restrictions, those in developing nations are still dealing with rising numbers of coronavirus cases. Compassion Canada is a charitable organization committed to helping children and their families in these developing nations. to prosper and live in health during the crisis. Joining me now to talk about it is the President and CEO of Compassion Canada, Alison Alley. Welcome back to BCN, Alison.
Thank you, Hal. It's great to be with you again.
Alison, how has COVID-19 really impacted your group, Compassion Canada?
Yeah, well, Compassion works in 37 countries in low, middle, and high income economies and countries. And this pandemic has impacted every single location we work, right? There's a reason why we call it a virus that knows no borders. And so, not dissimilar to in Canada, government quarantines were put in place in every area we work. Our offices were closed and staff were sent to work from home overnight around the globe. And so our focus since then as global leaders has been how can we come together and adapt and respond to not just the changing needs of kids living in poverty, but the critical and increasing needs that they're facing.
So what hurdles specifically have children and families living in poverty really come up against?
Yeah, so for kids and families living in extreme poverty, everything about COVID-19 is magnified for them. The risk, the fear, the uncertainty, the life and death reality that they face. Because many of the families that we serve have no safety net, right? So their survival is on the line when something like a health or an economic crisis hits. Many of them are day laborers, which means if they're unable to go out and earn a daily wage, they're unable to put food on their table at night. But beyond that, experts are also talking about the cascading effects of this pandemic. We anticipate hunger may double by the end of the year. We see the pandemic triggering, an increase in preventable diseases like malaria and measles. And really, it could undo more than 10 years of progress towards combating poverty. And so this is a crisis for the world's poor, unlike anything we've ever seen.
Alison, have staff members been able to visit the homes of the sponsored kids? And if so, what measures have they taken to really prevent the spread of COVID-19?
Yeah, our program has always been locally led and contextualized with a focus on knowing, loving, and protecting kids based on their unique needs and the unique challenges that they face. And but in this season, as you can imagine, our staff and our partners are having to be more creative and adaptive than they've ever had to be in how they go about doing that. But they're getting in front of them. They're visiting their homes when they're able to do that. They're delivering food and hygiene kits. They're making mask and hand sanitizer, educating communities through flyers and digital campaigns. And of course, a critical part of our work right now is trauma counseling and child protection. Because when there's crisis in the home and when there's instability, kids are often the ones that are the most impacted as violence in the home increases. So we're working on that as well, of course.
Can you comment on the strain this crisis has had specifically on medical services in some of these developing countries?
Yeah, the countries that we work in, Hal, already have fragile and strained medical and health systems. So as you can imagine, when you add COVID-19 to the picture, it becomes even more critical because they have to choose where to allocate their already limited resources. It's not dissimilar to what we saw during the Ebola epidemic when West African countries had no choice but to really devote their limited resources to battling the deadly disease. But it meant that other important life-saving interventions like basic vaccinations or maternal health were neglected. And that basically led to a rise in maternal deaths. And so it is dire. It's staggering how under-resourced they are and the implication of that. But actually, it's interesting timing because I was just on a call with our National Director of Compassion Ecuador right before talking to you, Hal. And he had talked about how, in addition to all the ways that they're helping kids and families access medical services or give them access to private hospital care if needed, they've also created a new telehealth program. And so they've created this phone number similar to telehealth that we would have that these kids and families can call to access a network of doctors and practitioners and counselors. But what I love about this is that some of those medical professionals are former sponsored children who have gone through our leadership development program and are now doctors and nurses. So incredible work's being done.
Wow, great success stories. Nice to hear that. Now, are cases of the virus, Alison, increasing or decreasing in some of these developing nations?
Yeah, the spread and the impact of the virus is certainly different everywhere that we work, but it is definitely continuing to increase. Developing countries now account for 3/4 of the new daily cases that are being reported. But of course, we know that with the limitations of testing in those contexts, the numbers are much, much higher. But it is increasing the fastest in Latin America right now, faster than anywhere in the world. We happen to work in Brazil, which, if you're following the news, that's now become one of the new epicenters of the pandemic, right? And they're anticipating that its numbers are going to surpass the United States in the coming weeks. For us, we've got our eye on the fact that it's spreading into the Northeast region, which is where most of the country's impoverished regions are. And it's also moving into indigenous territories in the Amazon, which, as you can imagine, we were just talking about limited medical care. That would be most certainly the case there.
So how about education? Are people able to get out to some of these regions, the far remote regions of the Amazon or maybe in Latin America, and explaining that, social distancing, physical distancing is important, not to spread the virus, the masks and so forth?
Yeah, I mean that's the challenge. It's education is always a struggle. First of all, in getting to the remote regions, as you said, but even those who have access to education, formal education, are no longer able to go. So for us as an organization, we have been working as it relates to just healthcare and prevention education to provide that in creative ways. We have different social media and digital campaigns. We've been putting flyers up in communities, but we also have been creating videos and FaceTime calls with students who have been preparing, for example, for end of year exams or for different schoolwork. We've ensured to get in front of them and support them in their more formal academic and educational needs as well.
Now, Compassion Canada also has this thing called We Rise as One initiative, helping out in some of these developing countries. Allison, let's chit-chat a bit about that.
Yeah, well, ultimately, we feel like a global crisis warrants a global response. And so our worldwide Compassion family has come together for the first time to launch a global fundraising campaign to help the most critically vulnerable children and families. And so we're inviting exactly that, folks around the globe to join us and to rise as one, to lift up their voice, to give their influence, but also to respond practically to those who so desperately need it. So, specifically, how we're raising funds to give at risk children, families, and communities the health and stability they need through hygiene, food, and shelter.
What is in some of these kits actually that has the food and hygiene?
Yeah, so for hygiene, it would include really practical things like hand sanitizer, soap, vitamins, supplements, cleaning supplies, protective masks, and of course, as we talked about education, the tools on how to use it and why it's important. But we also have these food kits that we're handing out. And it's probably worth noting that food security is becoming one of the most prominent and severe risks, not just for the people that we serve, but for those experiencing COVID-19 in these low-income economies. Because as I said, they're unable to make income, which makes them unable to provide food, but also how we're seeing already that global supply chains are starting to break down. When there's food shortages and shortage of supply, we know that the price goes up, which is just magnifying and intensifying the need for these families. So for us, we are providing practical kits that include things like rice and eggs and milk and corn and other non-perishables. While also a large part of our work is on helping pregnant and new moms. And so we ensure that these pregnant and nursing mothers have the nutrition and supplements that they need as well.
They sound fairly helpful. Will Compassion continue to give out the kits after the coronavirus crisis?
Yeah, I mean, this is a short-term relief that we're doing as part of our long-term sustainable development efforts. And so we always focus on the holistic well-being of the kids that we serve. We work to grow them spiritually, socially, physically, and cognitively. And therefore, things like hygiene and food and stability are a regular part of what we do. But as we move forward and enter new phases of development, the way that we offer them and how we do it will continue to change based on their unique needs and the opportunities around them.
Allison, even before we've ever heard of COVID-19, your organization was involved in something called Holistic Child Development Work. Tell me a bit more about that.
Yeah, so that recognizes that we as human beings are whole beings, and we can so often think of poverty as just an economic challenge that requires a financial response. But we, particularly as a faith-based organization, recognize that not dissimilar to how Jesus grew. It says in Luke 2:52 that Jesus grew in wisdom, in stature, in favor with God, and in favor with man. We follow that model and develop kids spiritually, socially, physically, and cognitively so they can really flourish into their full God given potential and contribute wholly to the community around them.
Let's talk more specifically now about how Compassion Canada works. On your website, you say that we shouldn't respond to poverty by just handing out food and Bibles, correct?
Yeah, we really think that it's important, first of all, to have a long term model that prioritizes and highlights the local, national people. And so I think the first thing to understand, and I will answer your question more directly, but the first thing is we work only with national offices and partner with local churches who have been there before Compassion, will be there after Compassion, and really know the names and the faces and the needs of their communities. And because of that, they understand that poverty is complex, development is complex, and not dissimilar to how we think about our needs, Hal, the needs of our kids, the needs of our society. They work to address all of those needs as well and say, yeah, there's a physical component, but there's also social, interpersonal, there's family needs, there's community needs. And so they work to grow kids holistically in that context in appropriate ways.
And we pray that God would bless and support various nonprofits, including your own, which honor him and bring him glory. How can our viewers bless you? What are you specifically needing help with? Is it maybe volunteers?
Yeah, well, first of all, we appreciate your prayer. There's so much need, as you can imagine, and we are facing an incredible amount of cases in our beneficiaries and their families, and of course, are starting to encounter deaths of the kids that we serve or of our frontline partners and volunteers. So pray for them and the impact on their family. But specifically, absolutely, we're always looking for volunteers. And actually, we launched this We Rise as One campaign with our volunteers, which are really close family members of our organization, just last night. And so you can check out different volunteer opportunities on our website, which is compassion.ca.
Yes, for more information, definitely check out that website and continue with the great work around the world. Great job, Allison.
Thank you so much, Hal. Appreciate your time.
Allison Alley, President and CEO of Compassion Canada. And on behalf of all of us here at PCN, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless, and thanks so much for watching.